Good evening, Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to another edition of Talking Point. My name is Faraz Patel. I'll be in your company for the next 45 to 50 minutes. Now, around 10 days ago, the ANC Youth League elected its new leadership in a conference that was, well, quite a long time in coming, but it did happen in Nazareth. Collen Malatji was elected as the new ANC Youth League president to take the organization moving forward, and of course, how its role is going to be in today's political and of course social era of South Africa. Collen joins me now in studio. Mr. Malatji, good evening and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much for the invite.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. How's the tenure been so far? What's it, 10 days now into it? So how's things gone so far for you as the new Youth League president?
You know, I've not rested since the election. You know, before I was the president, I was also part of the task team, having a role of being a deputy coordinator. Now I've been planning the conference the past 3 months. After the conference, it's interviews, it's ANC meetings of the ANC, it's programs of the youth. Now it has been a hectic 10 days.
That conference was a long time coming, wasn't it? Because there was delays after delays. You have to also take into consideration, you know, COVID-19, the certain restrictions. But I mean, it finally happened. And I think for you, just being part of, you know, the leadership of the Youth League, I mean, it was something that you were relieved that this could finally happen. And of course, the new leadership could be elected.
Yeah, look, it's long overdue. The voice of the Youth League has been absent and a lot of wrong things have been happening. And the youth has not been having a voice of opinion to speak on their behalf. And I think we've lost a lot of battles we should have won. Now that the voice is back, at least you can see the hype. You check social media, go to Twitter, you go everywhere. Even the opposition parties are starting to feel threatened. Really, the Youth League is back now to mobilize the youth behind the pen of the ANC.
And you think that's going to make them shake, the opponent, the opposition?
Yeah, they know the power of the Youth League. When it's organized and disciplined, when it starts being the real Youth League, they know the youth of South Africa is an oldest organization, you know. We're an old organization as the Youth League since 1944. Now, can you imagine? It's not just a small organization. It's an organization that the whole of Africa has got respected for its training and for its being a voice of reason.
Mr. Malajti, this isn't your first time taking a major leadership role. Of course, you're a deputy coordinator for the task team, part of COSAS also, various student organizations. So how do you take your leadership that you had there into such a big leap with regards to being the president of the Youth League?
Look, the conference was from of the Youth League. I can say 80% of the delegation there is a generation that I led in COSAS as a president. Now, they elected me because they know my style of leadership. And I can say the other percentage is the ones that I've led in SASCO when I was in the NEC of SASCO. Now, I'm a very decisive leader. I take decisions and I act on them. And I think that's why they like about me. You know, it's not easy because I'm not only dealing with an organization that I must build. I'm dealing with an organization that has structural issues also. I'm dealing with a youth league that has been absent for a very long time. Faced with many challenges. I'm leading at a time where there's high level of unemployment of youth, which are looking upon the youth league to come out with a solution. Now I'm leading at a very difficult time. I'm living at a time where the organization I'm leading, it's faced with many challenges internally and externally. Society no longer believes that it can resolve many of its problems. Now we need to go back and win over the hearts of our people. Now there's no time to rest.
Mr. Malatji, I'm going to talk about obviously unemployment because that's a big, and we're going to need parts of the next segment to discuss this. The youth, right? How do you now, as the Youth League, you call yourself a decisive leader. How do you then go to the youth and say, trust us as the ANC again? Trust us as the ANC Youth League again? Because the youth kind of feel isolated. When you speak to them, they're like, I don't want to be interested in politics. So how do you, as Collen Malatji, the ANC Youth League president, tell your leadership, right, it's time for us to step up and regain the youth that lost not just interest in politics, but also interest within the Youth League?
Look, the leadership I'm part of, they know very well that if we don't act, we're gone. We need to restore hope. And we've got solutions for that. One of the issues that we are bringing forward is the reindustrialization. We need to reopen these factories that have been closed. We need to reskill the youth, because a lot of the skills that we have are not in line with economic activities of the country. I've made an example in many of my interviews that some of our qualifications we must do technical skills. I said I'll lead by example, to go and register a carpentry course so that they see that you can have a degree. But if your qualification don't respond to the economic activities of the country, it will not assist you moving forward. We need to use our raw materials to revive the secondary and tertiary sectors of the economy. Chimistel, for example, I'm from Ekurhuleni. Prospect used to be industrial hubs of Africa, but a lot of factories have closed down, have turned into empty places that can be used. Now we need to revive them. We need to. The president has made an announcement on having solar panels in all households. We can't import them from China. We need to have them here to be done in South Africa so that it creates employment for the youth and also other business opportunities for the youth. Now, those are the solutions we're bringing forward. Now, the only way the youth will come back into politics is when they see action and when we restore hope.
Mr. Malatji, the current youth, as we said right now, it's probably different to the one that maybe the leadership under Collen Maine. So things have changed. A lot has happened from, of course, the era of 2015 to 2022. So as we speak, how will this current Youth League leadership speak to the youth and be in touch with them? Because being in touch with the constituencies and the people within, especially the youth within our country, is important. So what is the task of this Youth League leadership to say, right, we need to speak to this current youth in order to make sure that not only we're in touch with them, but we can help deal with the issues that they currently have?
One of the biggest issues we have as part of our stakeholder engagements is the Youth League is losing their non-racial character because we have left other communities out. And we must take responsibility for that. We've stopped mobilizing in communities that are mainly dominated by whites, mainly dominated by and many other races. We've turned the ANC into only a black party. And it's problematic because that's not what the ANC stands for. It's a non-racial organization. It must reflect the demographics of the country. And we'll be starting programs with your assistance and these platforms to meet with everyone. All stakeholders in business and other communities, they must speak about their issues. Why do they feel excluded in their own country? And all of those issues. We need to bring them in so that everyone is from parts. Number two, we need to go to churches to speak with them in churches, to get to understand what is their main problems. We need to go to business forums. Now, we can't rest. We must go to all stakeholder forums. Ideas must be from the ground. They can't be up-down ideas. It must be the ground. It must be the youth that infuses how the Youth League must be. And that is the style of leadership that I want to lead. I want to lead a style of leadership where we have too many advisors from the ground on the voices of issues that they want me to raise. Now, you can't do that without going to the ground and engage. If you want to do through the newspapers and sitting in your office, you'll not get the gist of the issues that you must deal with as a country.
You speak about, obviously, the ANC being a non-racial organization. It is there. But how do you now go to, an Indian, communities, colored, white communities, and say, right, guys, we want you to be part of the organization? Of course, one of your comrades, Fasia Hassan, she's been quite, vocal in the way she's been saying things about, her feelings of the Youth League. And she spoke really well, of course, in one of the opening addresses. So how do you now, the Youth League, say, okay, let's target these various communities so we can make sure that not only do we have the votes, but we also have the attention of the various other communities so they can be...
doesn't speak to their interests. That's why you need stakeholder engagements. You need to go and understand what affects them. People of Regepak might not have the same problems as people of Katlehong. People of Katlehong might not have the same problems as people of Bedford View. People of Bedford View might not have the same problems as people of Siabuso and Ndebele. Now, that's how you deal with issues. People associate themselves with an organization that addresses their issues. Now, we must develop a program that speaks to them. They must come into the program and say, if these things are addressed, we want to be ambassador of it because we want to do things for them. We're saying, come closer. There's a platform. There's a voice of the Youth League. You guys must be part of the Youth League. We'll assist you to drive all of these ideas so the voice is heard everywhere. And look, the Youth League is the Youth League of the ruling party. A lot of decisions that we take become policy and becomes implemented. Now, can you imagine everyone is infusing all the ideas there? There will be no need for any other organization to exist because we'll be addressing all the issues of the youth of South Africa.
After the break, I continue my conversation with Collen Malatji. We're going to be discussing youth unemployment and, of course, that massive problem that is occurring right here in the country. Do stay tuned to Talking Point. Welcome back to Talking Point. I'm in conversation with newly elected ANC Youth League President, Mr. Collen Malatji. Mr. Malatji, youth unemployment currently sits at over 60%. How does the Youth League change this? Because, I mean, when you drive past various Labour Department offices, most of it is youth. And the despair on them can be seen quite clearly. I'm going to talk about mandates in a bit, what you guys obviously as the Youth League had decided upon during the conference. But how does this change? Because there has to be a way for this unemployment rate at 60% to go down, even if it is under 50%.
It's a scary moment. We're in the sitting with a ticking bomb of unemployment of youth in South Africa. And part of the issues that we've been raising for years is that we need to create corridors of the economy, for example, of economic activities. And our education system and our schools must be linked to that. I'll make an example with Limpopo, for example. It's an agricultural, it's part of an agricultural hub, You need to go and set up agriculture schools. People of that area must be able to learn how to farm and participate in that economy, agri-processing. Now, the revolution that we need to enter into is a reskilling revolution. People must not move to Gauteng anymore for opportunities. They must work in their own areas, because what creates also high level of informal settlements is because people leave their houses in rural areas to come and to be economically active here in Gauteng. Now, that will not work. It has not worked. Many countries that are developed, they've created corridors. Every province must have economic activities, and the education of that area must be linked to that. Mining towns like Bobujanala and the Malajti, you can't have schools there where there's no mining subjects. It must be linked to that. Everyone must be linked to their own economic activities, and we've brought forward those solutions. Ours now is to make sure that they're implemented. You can create internships, learnerships, but if there's no clear program of economic transformation and the agenda to resolve all of those issues, you will have a lot of unemployed, educated youth. Leave the issue of the uneducated ones. You still have the educated youth also who are unemployed. Now, they don't even inspire those who are not educated to go to school, because themselves, they're not employed. Now, because we've done a lot of courses ourselves that are not responding to economic activities of our own country. Now, we need to go and reskill ourselves. We need to go to another skill centers, another TVET colleges, and do skills that respond to economic activities so that we are relevant to our own economy. Entrepreneurship, we need to reinvest in small businesses. There's many economies that work. They've invested in small businesses. You can go to China, you can go to small-scale businesses that are the ones that are thriving, creating employment in those areas. Another issue we need to deal with urgently is the issue of illegal foreigners. Illegal foreigners have taken over our towns. Small businesses that are owned by South Africans cannot compete with them, because also they bring a lot of illegal goods and sell them at a very cheap price compared to what is offered in the market. Now, we must not be scared to speak about it. When you speak about illegal foreigners, you're not speaking xenophobic. You are speaking about people who are in the country who you can account for, who are heavy on the infrastructure of health, they are heavy on our schools, they are heavy on everything. But the human rights forces are that we can't do anything for them, but we need to act on them. Our police systems need to do assessments. Our towns have turned into drug capitals because of that. And you can't say it's not illegal foreigners, you'll be lying. It's illegal foreigners, it's visible. We need to deal with those issues urgently. You need to put your country first and protect everything that you have.
You talk about illegal foreigners. I know it's a touchy subject, but there has to be will from government, isn't there, to deal with that issue? Because you and I can both say, okay, so these illegal foreigners are coming and they are, of course, coming into the townships and taking over the economy. But if there isn't a will from government to try and solve that issue, because get where you're coming from. There has to be a line between finding out what they're here for, but also at the same time not being xenophobic. So how does government then get involved? Because this has to be addressed, because we've seen so many xenophobic attacks happening in South Africa. But how do we change that narrative? Because if you're not going to go ahead and address the issues head on, then we're going to be sitting the same situations we saw in 2019, 2012, and even, probably in between those years.
Anything that you say is illegal is wrong. It means it's not supposed to be happening. Now, we need to push our law enforcement agencies to act, because it's illegal. We're not saying that foreigners must not come to our country. No, our country is open for business, for everyone, because we also have foreign investments in other countries and all of those things. But we're saying that when something is illegal, you can't account for it. For example, if you are hijacked by someone who's illegal in your country, how will the police find that person? Because that person in the books of the country is not supposed to be here, is not here in the country. Now, those are things that they're dealing with. Now, you need to act on it, because if the government doesn't act on it, you will have a crisis of people taking the law into their own hands and having xenophobic attacks, which we don't promote. Now, we need to act first, because the role of the state is to create an environment that is conducive for investors to invest in. That is number one. So create employment. But if your country is a drug capital, if your country is full of illegal foreigners, if your roads are collapsing, if your hospitals are collapsing, if your schools are collapsing, no one is going to invest in a country like that one. Now, we need to put our country first. And those are immediate issues we must address. I know the Minister of Home Affairs has been acting on it, has been up and down on it. We need to engage the Human Rights Commission to say that they need to assist us to protect our own country also. It can't be that every time we need to act on illegal things, they're the first to run to court to block us for doing that. Everyone who, they leave other countries. The USA is ready to dump people in South Africa, but they don't want them in the USA, but they are safe in South Africa. Those are things that we need to address, to say that, no, we can't do that. We know we've got the most beautiful constitution ever, but we need to protect South Africans, and South African interests must always come first.
Mr. Malatji, the Progress in International Reading Literacy study said 8 out of 10 children cannot read. That's scary. That's a scary thought. That's 80% out of, the 100 of our children, our youth that cannot read. How is the Youth League going to change that? Because without reading, what's the point?
Look, we need to, those are things that we also spoke about. We need to reskill our teachers and train them. We need now we have technologies that can assist that. We need to invest in that direction, because reading is the most important thing ever. But another problem that we're dealing with is a language issue. We need people to start learning their own mother tongue, because it's easy. Research also proves that anyone that studies in their own mother tongues is bound to perform better. Now we have a Collen Malajti, who's Pedi, who's the nearest school to him is an English and Afrikaans school, and the policy says you must go to a nearest school. Then you are forced to learn in English and Afrikaans and still go back home and speak Pedi, and compete with someone who is an Afrikaner or an English person who doesn't have to adjust between 3 or 4 languages. Now, those are things that we need to deal with on the agent basis, because we need that movement to happen very fast, so that we learn, even if English is a universal language, but we can adjust. Why in countries like China and other countries, they learn their own home languages and they're performing. They're one of the best performing economies. When you go to China, you adjust to get someone to translate in Chinese. You don't force them to know English. You get there and adjust because you want to trade with them. Now, when they come to South Africa, they adjust to the language of South Africa because they want to trade with you. Now, the universal language of trade is not true. People adjust to what is there for them.
Mr. Malajti, the current youth, when we speak about registering for voting, they're not interested. They say, well, if I vote, nothing's really going to be solved. With just under a year to go before the national elections, how does the Youth League say, how do we get the current youth to go and register to vote and come next year, be there in the polling stations, given that next year's elections is going to be quite a huge one for the future of South Africa?
We will be on the ground, organizing the youth. We're coming up with solutions. Our manifesto program was speaking about all the good things the ANC has done because and the ANC has done a lot of good things. The media might not be saying it, but we've kept the country together for long. Many countries, many liberation movements, but this time they've collapsed. And look, we go to Europe, we go to everywhere, they are highly affected. But no one speaks about it. But and speaks about the things we'll correct and what we will be doing going forward. But those are what the youth must start being informed because not all is lost. 20 years ago, a young person was not just walking to university, get an FSAS and study. Education is free from early childhood development until matric. When you go to varsity, the environment is created for you to study, get an FSAS, get a flat. While you are at that thing, your parents at home, your grandmother who's unemployed gets grant, your younger sister gets. I'm not saying those are permanent solutions, but I'm saying that it will not be true that the ANC has not done anything at all for the people of South Africa. It has done a lot for the people of South Africa, but more must be done to create opportunities and employment. There must be a redirection of investments. I've spoken about it in the beginning on creating economic corridors so that the youth of the country now are able to be actively involved in the economy. The biggest issue that people speak about is corruption. We must not run away from that. It is the ANC that acknowledge that within our ranks we had a lot of problem of corruption. People who have given responsibilities to be accountable on behalf of the ANC in deployments in municipalities, in deployments in provincial government. Most of them have been found wanting. They've been finding their hands inside the pockets of the state. We put the law of step aside. The ANC, it's us who said, no. If you are found charged of corruption, we don't want you anymore in our organization. Go and clear your name if you're saying you're not guilty and come back clean because we can't be a hub of corrupt people in the ANC anymore because society has revolted against the ANC because corruption affects service delivery. Corruption affects a lot of things in this country. Now, we can't afford that. On top of the problems we're faced with of high level of unemployment and poverty and inequalities, we still have people who still steal from the little that we have.
Okay, I want to talk about corruption and the step-aside rule in a bit when we do come back from the break. Do stay tuned to Talking Point. My conversation with Collen Malatji continues. Welcome back to Talking Point. My conversation with Collen Malatji is still on the go. Mr. Malatji, economic freedom or death. How is this going to be achieved?
Look, the economic freedom battle, it's a battle that we are ready to fight and die for. One is that without that, it can't be explained that majority of people of the country are not active in their own economic activities. The minorities are still in charge of the economy, even still today, Another ticking bomb, the private sector is still run by the few white males in South Africa, It's 29 years later, we still can't explain why we have not resolved that level of inequalities. Now, it's a battle we're fighting for. Look, the slogan was taken from the freedom or death that was led by the late Popita Mokaba when we were fighting for liberation of our people. And you know that what they did that time, they fought with everything that they have. Then we said as a generation, it can be that we are sidelined from our own economic activities and things are still normal. We're going to push the ANC policy-wise to implement because the resolutions of the ANC are very clear on the restructuring of the economy. But the problem is the implementation. Now, as a body of opinion, the ANC, as the Youth League, even from our formation, we've always played a role to redirect the policy posture of the ANC and all that. And that's what we're coming in to do even now.
Right. Policies are a piece of paper. You mentioned implementation. Both you and I know who controls the interests of the economy. White males. Right. 29 years into democracy. You and I would agree that the ANC still allowed this to happen, that capitalism still reigns supreme, that they've allowed this to continue, right? We knew this was an apartheid, what happened in apartheid, right? It's now simmered down still 29 years into democracy. But now how do you go to the mother body and say this has to change? Because implementation has to happen, but the piece of paper is still there. So how do you now say, right, this has to change, the economy needs to go to the majority of the people? Because if that doesn't happen, then 5 years' time, you and I are going to be still sitting here having a very similar conversation.
Yeah, let's agree that in the 29 years, you removed the 10 years, because it was the 10 years of government of unity.
It's
and
still the
trying
ANC,
to-
Mr. Malatji.
Yes, we removed that because we're still building. Blocks were new in government, we're still a handover process. We've not changed much of the systems we're trying to, because our objective was not to collapse the country. Yeah, it was trying to bring everyone on board yet. The 19 years, we're shifting policy positions. There were many policies that were put in place, the PE that we're trying to bring in on board. And we tried to bring in a lot of classes. We created a middle class in the economy while we were still trying to restructure the pure pride of the economy. I want to take the responsibility that we've not done much to fix that. That's why we came in as a youth of the ANC to say enough is enough. The speed we're moving in is too slow. We need a faster speed now. Those processes were done. We've created the middle class that we have, who are in debts, who are suffering every day, and who live from hand to mouth. The houses and the cars they use are still owned by the banks. And any day, if they lose, if they are a salary away from poverty, it's not sustainable. We need now to be the drivers of the economy. That's why we spoke about reindustrialization. Who are going to be the drivers of that? It's going to be young people of South Africa who will be the new players in the economy, who will be put in place, who must be funded to go and reopen these factories and run them. And go and open the secondary industries of shops and all of these things and run them. It must be a deliberate program. There must be direct investment to deal with those issues. Now, who are there to deal with those issues and monitor and make sure they're implemented? You'll hear a lot of us. You'll hear with a serious irritation to those that don't want the economy to be restructured.
Right. You would go to a CEO of a mining company or whichever company, right? And you go to him and you say, listen, we need the economy to change. Remember, for 30 years, they've been sitting in a comfort zone. Do you honestly think they're going to change? Do you honestly think they're going to say, hey, listen, the environment's there for me to continue for another 30 years. Why do I need to change? What then do you, as the Youth League, along with your mother body, are going to say, this has to change, when the very same CEOs and chairmen are sitting in a very comfortable position? I'm talking specifically of the private sector that holds the monopoly within this country.
Those days are ending, of people who think that they can do as they want in the country. As I'm saying, we're going to be necessary irritation. We're going to be forced policies. They are set aside. Those things are there. We know they're on paper. They are set aside for youth to be accommodated in businesses, for women to be accommodated. Now we're going to go to all of these businesses and monitor them and check, have you been implementing the set asides that the government has a role that must implement? If not, then there must be consequences. There's not going to be days of people who just relax and no one hold them accountable for undermining policies in place to make sure that it empowers those who are disadvantaged.
Mr. Malajti, expropriation of land without compensation. It's sitting there in Parliament right now. You've been in Parliament. It's a sitting duck as we speak at the moment. Now, I know a lot has been done from land and rural development in order to have the giving of land to many of the agricultural farmers. But obviously, your slate, the economic freedom of death, wants full land expropriation without compensation. So now if you go to the mother body and say this needs to be done ASAP, how is it going to be done in order for that to be achieved? Because right now in Parliament, in the National Assembly, it's sitting there, but nothing's being done.
Let me clarify one thing first. We're not a slate, we're elected leadership. Things of slates have ended when we do campaigns. Now, we're no longer operating as a slate. We're leading everyone, even those that don't agree with us, to go as conference. Now, on the issue of the land issue, it's an urgent issue. Because when you take land, you restore the dignity of our people. Because when the day they took their land away from them, that's the day they stripped them of their dignity. There's three types of land that you must deal with. There's a land that must deal for food security. It's very important. Whoever you give to, you must train and make sure that they've got enough resources and capacity to farm, because you must protect food security. And if you give to someone that land and does not deliver, that must be ready to take it away and give it to someone who can do the work. The other one is for human settlement. You need to make sure that there's a human settlement, you give them houses, you build human settlement places for the people. Now that land is needed. Government has been delayed in that area because People have been refusing to release their land for human settlement. It's still in private hands. They're refusing to release it there, but they're not using it for anything. You'll find that someone sitting there in Europe is owning land in South Africa, but doesn't want to release the land parcels for both agriculture and human settlement. Now, those are areas that we need to enter in. Where we differ in Parliament with the EFF is that we are saying, as per the Freedom Charter, that the land must be owned by the people. That's what I'm saying. The EFF changed tune all of a sudden. They were agreeing with us when they were formed. Then when we were supposed to pass the land issues, remember the ANC doesn't have the majority to pass the issue alone. It needs other political parties. We need other political parties to assist us. Now we must lobby them on the matter of the land. They are saying the land must be owned by the state. See the contradictions. And those are the contradictions that society does not hear. What society cares about, the ANC is refusing. No. The ANC pushed the motion for the land to be taken. And we believe that everyone agreed, because the people that have been taking the dignity from are people of South Africa, from their land. But we're saying that we're putting systems in place. As we're giving them the land, we're empowering them to understand the purpose of that land. Now, it locked there. They voted against the issue because of the small technicality of the people and the state. That's where the problem we're dealing with.
Before we go to the break, Mr. Malatji, I want to talk about TVET colleges. I know you've been a big talk of with regards to there being more being done in these TVET colleges, because, okay, so both you and I come from universities, we've got degrees in our respective fields. But the TVET colleges, it's kind of looked down on because those with skills don't really have the necessary contribution towards the economy. Now, I totally disagree with that, because I believe that a carpenter, a plumber, wherever it may be, contributes a lot. So how will, TVET colleges, how do we make sure that these graduates continue to contribute towards the economy, especially now in the fourth industrial revolution?
Look, you need the TVET colleges. They are the drivers of the economy. It was a wrong narrative that when you don't have a degree, you're not educated. I'm a social scientist. Apart from analyzing and doing all of these things, what contribution can I make in the economy compared to an artisan who is trained by a TVET college? That person is a serious driver of the economy. Now that's why we need to campaign for these TVET colleges, because it's our school system. When you are in high school, you are told you must go to university. There's no ambassador. There's no one who tells you go to a skill center, to an artisan, go to a TVET college. Everyone, now if you have not passed enough, your TVET colleges are now profiled as a dumping area to those who have not qualified to have access to universities. You see, the profiling of them is wrong. We need to profile them differently. We need to put them as schools of the future. Because for anything you do, you need TVET colleges. Whether you want to produce plumbers, whether you want people in agriculture, whether you want artisans to put solar panels, look, everything here, from the assembly of the chairs we're sitting on top of, you need hands, you need skilled people to do those things. Now, the issue is the profiling. They've been profiled wrongly. They've been profiled as dumping areas by the media, by even our own teachers at school. They have not profiled TVET colleges as the most important thing to go to. Now, we need to reset the mind now, so that these are the issue areas. And let me tell you, you'll not even have a stampede universities. People will go to TVET, but will understand that that's where and a lot of people who go to TVET college are the ones who get employment. If you can check, they're the ones who get employment. The ones in universities, we struggle a lot because we're many, but our skills are not responding, most of them, to, especially as social scientists, to the demand of the economy.
After the break, I will wrap up my conversation with Collen Malajti. Do stay tuned to Talking Point. We'll be back after the break. Welcome back to Talking Point. Mr. Malajti, I want to talk of the Zondo Commission report, because obviously you mentioned step aside earlier on, right? So it's recommendations, whether or not the MPA, whoever the law enforcement authorities are, they need to make a decision on how they want to, of course, create the charge. But step aside, many ANC members have been implicated in this Zondo report. Right? Both you and I can agree on that. So how do we, as citizens, continue to hold them to account, those who have been charged, and make sure that the Zondo Commission's report is finally fulfilled, and that step aside, we can see much more of the ANC members who were charged in that Zondo report being not in the leadership positions that they're supposed to be in.
Remember, John, Zondo report is a report recommendation.
Yes,
Recommending for
100%.
It's not, no one is charged yet. And our position is that you must first be charged for you to step aside. And law enforcement agencies must work with speed to make sure that they investigate and they follow up on the Zondo Commission. Those that must be charged will be charged, must be charged. Then when that thing happens, we'll tell them. They know it's automatic in the ANC that they must step aside. But remember, the constitution of the country, the constitution of the ANC is not above the constitution of the country. Now, morally, we put a step aside so that people can clean their names and come back. It's not that we have said they are guilty. We have no right in this country as an individual to declare someone guilty before the court of law does that. Now, we're very careful on how we deal that matter. It's a moral issue now to say that morally, the ANC must not be associated with corruption. Now, if you know that you've been charged of something of corruption, we request you to step aside. There are those that were in Zondo Commission who can come forward themselves and say, I want the issue to be fast-tracked. That is morals. The issue to be fast-tracked, I will appear in the integrity committee and say I'm not guilty of this and this and this. I'll present myself there. But I'm requesting state institutions to start the process of investigating my matter so that my name is cleared. No, now that you do it morally, as a person, as a leader of society, so that I say that. But when you are charged, don't even wait for that. Don't even wait for you to do that. We tell you, step aside immediately.
Mr. Malatji, 2024, President Cyril Ramaphosa at the end of the NWC committee weekend said that he's confident that the ANC can win 2024. Of course, he'd say that he's the president of the African National Congress. Next year's elections, I think both you and I can agree, it's a hugely important one. But a lot of people are losing confidence within the ANC, right? How does the ANC change that perception? Because we've seen all the challenges that have happened. We've seen everything that's happened in this country. And we know, both you and I can agree on this, that it's a beautiful country to live in. How does the ANC now, and I'm going to specifically ask about you as a Youth League leader, change the perception so when the people are going to the polls, in their minds, they still feel that the ANC can confidently run this country for the next 5 years and beyond?
Look, the most urgent things to fix the low-hanging fruit, the energy crisis. The president has installed a minister responsible for that, only that. Because it's an urgent matter, it's a disaster. It's a matter that is contributing to a high level of unemployment, closing of small businesses, and many other issues that are faced by it. The minister was committed that by October, would have resolved the issue of load shedding. We're working on it. There's many other systems that are put in place to address the matter. The other issue is the issue of crime and drugs in society. Those are big issues that are making people to lose hope in the ANC. The people are hopeless because they don't even believe the police will resolve those matters for them. We act on them. I seen how the premiers put in the wardens and all of those people to deal with these things in communities, push them to do all of those things. Now, the point I'm trying to do is that restore hope. Because people don't hate the ANC. The last election has shown us people don't hate the ANC. People don't just sit at home and not vote for the ANC because the ANC has done so much for them. They're so disappointed in the ANC not being able to protect the work that is done, maintaining things that have failed. Parks in municipalities. We build beautiful parks, we leave them unmaintained. We build big schools, leave them unmaintained. Now, those are things that are low-hanging fruits that we must resolve urgently. And we're going to hold these ministers accountable. We have elected a second DSG in our structure. The role of that second DSG is simply to deal with monitoring and evaluation. Ministers will be coming and DGs to account to the Youth League on the work that they've been doing. We're creating a research unit in my office and the office of the DSG to assess our deployees in government. Now I'm saying those are practical things we'll be doing. That's what I'm saying. The youth must get closer. All kind of youth must get closer because now the new voice is back. They must get closer to raise all of this. We act on it. You know, in my other life as an MP, a whip of human settlement, I do a lot of oversight, and I can tell we get very disappointed as MPs. You go there, contractors appointed to build houses, and when you get there, the quality of those houses, you realize that, but this is insulting our people. But you see, the problem is that we have 400 MPs who must oversee 60 million people. I can give you an example now. If communities don't work with us in this thing, we'll not be able to get it right. Because people keep quiet about it. A person is given a bad house. They don't complain about these things. Now, it will take Collen as an MP many years to come and do oversight in your area. Now, it means you'll be living in that crisis if you will not speak out about it. That's why we've put out that monitoring evaluation. We'll be announcing it. We'll be having a hotline, all of those things. That people will start complaining about things that are not done right. Then those who can act on, we act on immediately.
Okay, there's two more questions that I need to get through to you, Collen, before, because time is against us. You're wanting the 50% youth representation within Parliament. My question to you is, we know Parliament's filled with a lot of elders. Are the elders going to allow that to happen? Is there going to be a chance that that 50% can be achieved within the National Assembly?
If you're an elder, are you going to allow it to happen? No. Now, the reality is that we are going to go on the ground on it. The ANC is democratic, unlike other parties. In the ANC, we call branch meetings to nominate people who want to go to Parliament. That's what the package will be. We have many members of the Youth League or members of the ANC who are 18 years and above. Our branches will be the battlefield to install the youth. Expecting elders to hand it over is not going to happen. We'll be expecting the possible. Also, we don't want to be given things. We will be taking things. Being given things is a thing of the past. We'll be using our mobilizing capacity to mobilize the ground for what we want the youth to be done. And the ANC allows that. One thing about the ANC is that, unlike other political parties, it's a democratic organization. It allows that. We have internal democracy. We contest the space. And those images are accepted and move forward. And that's what kept the ANC for over 100 years to be alive, because it allows for rebate, new ideas, new contests within the organization.
I'm not an elder as yet, so I'm kind of grateful for that at this very moment. Okay, one final question, Mr. Malatji. Sports. How do we get our national teams to have youth grassroots levels happening? Specifically talking about our football team, Bafana Bafana, because we see the guys that are making their debuts or starting to be at their peak are making their first appearances for Bafana Bafana. And we see the rest of Africa, guys that are 18, 19, are able to go ahead and make their senior debuts. So how do we first allow that to happen, that youth get more involved? And how is the Youth League going to be sitting with, maybe the SAFAs of this world to make sure that more youth are given a chance at senior level and they can enhance the football within our country?
Our biggest problem we're faced with is the collapse of school sports. We need to revive that. We are going to engage the Minister of Sports, Comrade Zizi. He's a very youthful man who listens. We have an appointment with him to engage with him about the school sports. We need a school league. I can see rugby is doing it very well. We need to introduce in soccer. We need a school league that will be profiled at the level of leagues and where scouters will be taking players from. You know how you assist us with what also? You assist us with activism in schools. It means that we will not have young people after school going around not knowing what to do. There will be active in the old schools, the mobilization in the schools. The youth will be given an opportunity to participate fully in that. Not only males, we'll have females in soccer and males in soccer for both Banyana Banyana and Bafana Bafana. Because we believe that Banyana Banyana must be given the same attention we give to Bafana Bafana. They're not given that attention, they're not given enough sponsorship, they're not given enough support. And part of the reason is what? I see the issue of SAFA. Part of the reason is that us as South Africans, we don't support Banyana Banyana games. We don't support Banyana Banyana games. How many of us have went to a Banyana Banyana football game in South Africa? We don't. Now we need to start doing that. We need to start mobilization towards that direction so that the moment they take it serious, even sponsors can see these are serious teams that must be taken care of.
Mr. Malajti, the Banyana Banyana, of course, they're going to be competing at the World Cup that is going to be happening. the pay situation that has happened, how relieved are you that finally there's something that is coming there, because they deserve it, don't they? Given that they are the African champions, and of course at the same time they need to be treated with respect, and that hadn't happened obviously prior to them departing from the World Cup.
Look, if you've been following me, I've been in the forefront of fighting
I know
for
that. Yeah.
I'm part of the ambassadors to fight that they must get equal pay with Bafana. The ANC and the Youth League, when they come back from Australia, will also giving them their check of 1 million rand to try to see if we can assist where we can assist. The biggest issue that suffers is the issue of sponsors, that no one wants to come on board to assist. Unlike Bafana has got more sponsors than Banyana Banyana. We want to mobilize the private sector to also assist the Banyana Banyana and make sure that they get the support. But that can be done if South Africans unite and support their games.
Yeah.
Because sponsors want to know if their products will be known by society. Now, as long as we stay at home and not watch Banyana Banyana, not tune in the football games, we'll still have a crisis of them not getting enough sponsors and support.
Hopefully that what we saw, obviously, in the Africa Cup of Nations can transcend to the World Cup. Mr. Malatji, there's so much that we wanted to speak about. I know, unfortunately, time is against us. We'd like to thank you so much for coming through, and all the best, in your new role as the Youth League leader. And, politics aside, we hope that you, along with your leadership, can help the youth in trying to solve many of the problems which can transcend nationally, and for us to live as a better community, and most importantly, within a better country.
Thank you very much for the invite.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. That is Mr. Collen Malatji, the new Youth League president of the African National Congress. Well, that's all we have for you here on Talking Point. We'd like to thank you, the viewer, for joining us. We'll see you again, same time, same place next week. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.